Good afternoon. Welcome into A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, where today I remind you to commit to the rebuild. Welcome in episode number 3 of Locked On Atlanta here as we are on this new venture with Locked On Atlanta Sports. So glad you guys have chosen to make A to Z part of your daily sports regimen. Excited to be with you guys here again. As you can see my background here in Florida, I'm at my parents' house on vacation, spring break with the kids, but that doesn't mean the Atlanta sports stop, but it does mean A to Z stop. So I'm with you guys all the way through, and I'm certainly glad that you guys have chosen to make Locked On Sports Atlanta part of your daily regimen. And you guys may be looking at this on YouTube, watching, say, hey, Zeno, put some sleeves on. No, I'm on vacation. I'm not putting on sleeves. I don't wear sleeves on vacation. So anyway, we got beautiful weather here in Florida, but a lot going on in the Atlanta sports scene we're going to get to in just a few moments. But wanted to remind you guys about our good friends at betonline.net, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. From all the latest odds, contests, player props, you name it, BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your latest sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for all the leagues this season, not just basketball, which again ended last night. Congrats, by the way, to the Kansas Jayhawks. What a comeback. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device and learn more about the trends in the action. Bet online, where the game starts. BetOnline.net. Okay, so something went down in the NFL yesterday that kind of maybe flew under the radar a little bit, but I think it's 100% worth talking about as it pertains to the Falcons. The Eagles and the Saints made a trade. The Saints ended up getting the number 16, number 19 pick and 194 in this year's draft. The Eagles get the 18th pick, number 101 this year, number 237, and a first rounder in 2023, and a second rounder in 2024. And when this happened, a lot of people tried to predict where the Saints were going to go and what they were going to do and how this was a quarterback or just trying to stock up on players that they can immediately get. Of course, the Saints need this because they have next to zero cap space. I think they're actually $75 million over the cap to start this year. But regardless of all that, as it pertains to the Falcons, I saw this move made and the thought came to me about committing to the rebuild, because in order for the Falcons to get out of this, they have to dive right into it completely. And I know Arthur Blank and Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith saying we're not in a rebuild. I hope that's just public talk. I hope they're not sitting behind closed doors, not actually recognizing that they are in a full-on rebuild, because that's exactly what they are. And if they can't recognize that and they can't understand that, this team is going to be bad for a very, very, very long time. And Arthur Smith is going to be out of a job very, very, very quickly. There are two teams that popped into my head, and one of them just made the trade because it was the Philadelphia Eagles that really kind of jarred this whole thing. But if you look at the Miami Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles, they are two teams and have used similar paths, and the Falcons should be modeling themselves after those two organizations and how they get out of it. Let's go back to 2019. The Miami Dolphins were 5-11, right? Brian Flores was a first-year head coach, but they had traded away Minka Fitzpatrick. They had traded away a lot of their players, young players too, under contract, and just acquired more draft picks, right? And stocked up on commodities and abilities to make things happen. And then they go 10-6 and just miss the playoffs. And then they go 9-8 and just miss the playoffs. But that team now is viable, and it's been viable for 2 seasons. It literally took them a season to turn around a rebuild. Look at Philadelphia. In 2020, they were 4-11-1. They fired Doug Peterson. What did they do? The following year, 2 first-round draft picks. One of them was Jalen Hurts. They go to 9-8 and make the playoffs in 2021. I mean, it's that simple. But the key for both of these teams in turning around this whole thing and getting through a rebuild was multiple first-round picks. Because that's the way ahead now. That's the way out of a rebuild, is multiple first-round picks, because they are such valuable commodities. And again, there's 2 schools of thought here, right? Like, one of them is first-round picks are valuable, right? And the other one is what the Rams are doing, saying we don't need first-round picks. We're just going to acquire talent and trade away our first-round picks. We'll get cheaper talent at the back end of the draft, but you got to be really good at drafting, right? You have to be really good at finding talent and being able to evaluate it and figuring out where it is deep in the draft, where other teams miss. Often you're hitting. But those are the 2 schools of thought. But one of them is a school of thought that's, hey, I'm geared towards a championship. I'm a couple of pieces away from a championship. The Eagles and the Dolphins, at that point where they acquired all those first round picks, were not. And that's the easiest way out of this whole entire mess. But doing that means that this is not year one of the rebuild. Year one of the rebuild starts next year. That's the acknowledgement that you really have to get into, because this won't be a 1 year turnaround for them just because of the salary cap situation that they're in and dumping Matt Ryan and getting rid of the contract. But the only reason for them to do all this is so they can get out of the rebuild quicker. Now, what do the Falcons do with the eighth pick? Well, part of that is that, you want to think about drafting a quarterback, but the only reason you do that is for the value of it, right? You get a young guy under contract. You hope that he's good enough. You hope that, and again, look at the Eagles and Dolphins. Doesn't have to be great. Tua and Jalen Hurts are just good. They're not great. They are not to the level of Justin Herbert. They're not to the level of clearly Lamar Jackson or anybody else. They're just good. They're just good. They're average quarterbacks at this point. But the thing is about drafting a quarterback this year is you have to be willing to move off of him if he's not the guy. It happens that quickly. And so from that standpoint, I don't know if it's the best move to draft a quarterback. But what I do know is the best move: trading Grady Jarrett and getting a first round pick. Trading Grady Jarrett right now is like a must. It's at the top of the list. And if he nets one first round pick, not this year, I want it to be next year. I don't want this year's first round pick. I want Grady Jarrett traded for a 2023 first round pick, because what you do this year really doesn't matter. And it's not going to matter. There's not enough for you to get out of the hole this year. You just kind of got to sit in it for a year, given where things are. But you have to turn around and net another first round pick next year. It's the way you can start increasing more capital, because then you can trade one of those first round picks for more picks, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to quarterback. That's the key. You get out of it. Again, Tua and Jalen Hurts weren't great, but they were quarterbacks that you could at least be stable with. And until you get that, and could Marcus Mariota be the guy? Yeah, maybe. Could be. I wouldn't bank on it. I know he's not a long-term solution, but maybe for a year or two, if he's good enough to float you to lift this thing. And that may be the reason not to draft a quarterback this year. But you've got to start to acquire more picks. They've got to get for more first-round picks if they want to get out of this thing in any size, way, shape, or form. There's literally just no way for them to move beyond this rebuild without more first-round picks, because that's the capital that they can use to acquire players, to move up, to get players that they want in future drafts upcoming. And that's the way you exit this rebuild. But they've got to commit to it. When I saw the Eagles do what they did, it's just like, wow, all of a sudden they are one foot out the door of the rebuild, because they went 9-8 last year and made the playoffs. And really, were they a real playoff team? No, but you watched how quickly they got out of it. And you're like, that's what I want our front office to do. That's what I want the Falcons front office to do. That's how I want them to be, because those are the kind of moves that you hired Terry Fontenot to make. Let him do it. They have to commit to this rebuild if they're going to get out of it. All right, coming up next, there was an assertion made about the Atlanta Braves and how they need to go about repeating as world champs that I'll disagree with slightly. That's next here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta.